Is there more to midlife than just getting through it? Absolutely. Welcome. I'm your host, Debbie Cunningham, jazz artist turned midlife mentor, and I'm here to say to you loud and clear, it's time for your midlife crescendo. Welcome back, friends. I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. This week, we are wrapping up part 2 of Motherhood in Real Life with my daughter, Deanna Carter. In today's conversation, we talk about her experience navigating motherhood while living abroad for 3 years, the added challenges of parenting in a digital and social media-driven world, and the importance of community at every stage of motherhood. Whether you're raising little ones or navigating the empty nest, one thing's for sure, we still need each other. So here's my continued conversation with Deanna. Well, let's talk a little bit about motherhood and actually living abroad, because I think that is that's a little bit of a turn, but I think you have a unique perspective because you experienced motherhood in a different way living in Germany. Do you want to talk a little bit about that or what you
Yeah,
experienced over
sure.
there?
We obviously were surrounded with Americans because of the military. However, even though we had different backgrounds, we all had this common place that we grew up with, these common ideals and ideas of how parenting looks and how things should be done, right? Even though that does vary, it's not as varied as people think in our country. But then parenting our style in a country that parents differently, not super differently, but there are things like the way that they go outside a whole lot more than we do, and they value that more, and their schooling is different. But the way they live is different. Where we were, now it might have been different if we had been like in a city like Berlin or Munich or whatever. We were in, the countryside. But the way the villages are set up is it's all that community style life that we were really built for. They say, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and we have just, well, we did not build our country to be a village.
Right.
Didn't build it that way. We have gotten way away from it. Social media has not helped that. We are way too individualized, in my opinion. But I didn't think about that, A, before I had kids, and B, it was really moving that changed that, because in our village, we could walk. The kids walked to school from like 5.
Wow.
And it's not that hard. I mean, it takes like 10 minutes to get from one side to the other, maybe more, but like they walk to school from a young age. Sometimes the parents go with them, sometimes they don't. But they know where they're going and they know everybody there.
Right.
And there's the bakery, there's a hotel, there was a restaurant, there was the butcher, we had a flower shop. And some of the bigger villages had more. Sometimes there were grocery stores and nail salons or whatever. But we had a little small one, and so they were all there together, doing life together. And then they had, through the year, when they had the holidays, they had their celebrations in the town square, and everybody came out and everybody saw the same people do, every time. And like they had when kids, because their drinking age is different, when they come of age, there's a big celebration every year for the kids that have come of drinking age that year. But the whole village is there with them, watching them, making sure they don't hurt themselves and that they are okay while they, explore this newfound freedom.
Hmm.
But
And what did you find with the way society is in there? The children are incorporated into society on a regular basis.
they
Yes?
are, like I said, they spend a lot more time outside, and that plays a big part in it, because it doesn't matter like what the temperature is. So like at all, not all, but a lot of restaurants, there's playgrounds or there's little areas. There's not necessarily, like, I would say we have more like high chairs and stuff, but there's playgrounds, there's places for families to be. There's that expectation basically that you're going to have your kids with you.
Well, do you have any questions for me? If you don't, it's fine.
Was it different? Well, okay, this is hard. This is kind of a hard question because of the technological advances that were made both in your and my lifetime changed parenting drastically.
Hmm.
You had a little bit of the social media, whatever, like as we were growing up, because it was us that got, like, my generation that got it basically first. but you weren't dealing with small kids and how to deal with that and some of the dangers of parenting in a tech world that we have to think about. Did you notice a difference in like the village aspect of motherhood between North and South since you moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee? I know you were a kid, but being raised in the North, not really parenting in the North. But like, did you notice a difference that way, or just time wise, or
I think what the difference is that getting back to a village mentality is that a lot of people live who are close with their family, living around their families, their aunts and uncles.
Mhm.
You see a lot of that in different cultures. It's not
Yeah,
across the board though. That being living around family is healthy because there's lots of people to help and encourage, especially moms at home with little kids. There's a
yes,
mom around who can help watch the kid, or a sister, or sister-in-law, or an aunt, anybody who can help fill in when you're juggling all the things and you need a little help.
yeah,
And I think that when was probably the norm when my parents grew up, although my mom didn't have that. But I
yeah,
would say your dad's mom had more of that help,
hmm,
right, with other people around. But I think that moving to the South, well, we moved away from our parents.
right,
So we moved to the South. I would say that that's where friendships became really crucial, where we helped one another. Because I
yeah,
had other moms that I was close to. We had a mom's group, even just getting together in a neighborhood
yeah,
so you guys could play, or we would meet somewhere so you could play and we could converse, but also we supported one another. That's why I think
yeah,
friendship, whether you're a young mom or friendship as an empty nester or a midlifer, if
yeah,
you don't have kids, friendship is so important through the years, and it
yeah,
makes a difference in motherhood. It makes a difference then in midlife. But as far as technological advances, I would say you have so much more access than I did to knowing what is helpful, but you also have a lot more distraction.
yeah,
I didn't have the distraction of social media or the comparison of
yeah,
social media when I was parenting. So I wasn't constantly wondering if I was doing it right next to the 10 people who have perfect curated Instagram posts about motherhood.
yeah,
So it's like a catch 22 because you can find, like, I send things to you all the time about great pages to follow that are giving
yeah,
excellent, child rearing advice, or
mhm,
so that you don't feel alone
yes,
it with other moms are also experiencing this. It's easier for you to see that online because now you can have other experience, but there's that temptation to compare your mothering or
yeah,
compare your child's development
hmm,
with another.
and
And
say, well, this
that
didn't work for me. Am I doing it wrong?
exactly. So I would say in every generation, there are pros and cons to what you have access to.
Yes,
I would say the digital age, there's a lot more dangers, unfortunately, than it's all in how you use it. It's a
yeah,
tool and it's all in how you use it. But definitely, as you're raising your kids, monitoring that and not giving them access like
yeah,
to the internet is a big deal because they're finding more and more things out about how our brains are wired and what's happening to our kids and- because they're plugged in online too much, right? In my generation, it was you're watching too much TV. But as these more and more generations are born with this access to basically worldwide technology to be and see and anything online, it can be a dangerous place that we have to manage. But that's another stressor on you as a parent.
hmm,
That was not a stress for me because you were in junior high before even texting came around.
yes,
And you didn't have we drew a line in the sand and said you weren't getting a phone until we needed you to have one, even though a lot of your friends had them. So when and that's when you got it. And then so social media wasn't even a thing back then in your generation. It was really at the
that's when it kind of started. Was right around when I got a phone.
a
When
little
it
bit
kind of
old.
stopped. I mean, MySpace was around, but I never had MySpace.
Right.
So
So I think that in each generation, there are pros and cons, and you learn more things,
Yeah.
and it's having a conversation about it. There's dangers with technology that I didn't have to worry about my kids in that
Yeah.
regard, right? Because you were much older.
I mean, technology specific, it's so hard to think. I mean, they're just 5 and 3, but like eventually I have to talk to them about like the dangers of the internet and people are not who they say they are and
Right.
just hope that they listen because it
Right.
can
And
have
so
big, big consequences.
right. And that is where you need to be monitoring and having oversight. But raising your kids with these godly attributes, with godly
Hmm.
characteristics, I should say, is so important. And you are working to do that. I tried to do that. And you coined a phrase about that. I really believed that as we walked and did life, I was to teach you who God was and the truth about the Word of God.
Hmm.
And what was the phrase you coined as we were growing up?
Oh, life lessons with mom.
You would look at me and say, "Is this another life lessons with mom?"
You know what?
However,
14-year-old Deanna did not know how lucky she was.
what did you say?
I said 14-year-old Deanna did not know how lucky she was. 29-year-old Deanna values the life lessons with mom.
Yes, and you told me that a few weeks ago, and I felt so vindicated.
I do catch myself. I'm like, oh, here's Debbie. Debbie is coming out of my mouth right now. Don't put that in there, Dad. Take that out.
No, it's okay.
I'll be here. Let me say it better. I'll be talking and I hear myself talking and I hear you. I'm like, oh, well, there it is.
Yep, yep, we become our moms often.
Sometimes I hear Grandma when I'm
There
talking.
there
Man,
you go.
what's happening?
That's that good training we poured into
It is.
you.
It is.
Well, what do you want your kids to remember about you as a mom?
I want them to not remember angry tears. I want them to remember the fun and like the I want them to remember the fun and the love and the warmth, I guess. That I didn't give up. I didn't, I always worked hard to make the best of it, all the situations, and to know that I did my best.
Yeah.
So I want them
And
to know when they go to therapy, is to say, "Yeah, mom tried her best."
We can only do the best with the tools that we have.
Yes. What do you hope that I remember?
What do I hope that you
Yeah, what do
remember?
you? Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Uh, Probably the same thing. Even now as a grandmother, I hope that you remember experiencing a lot of love and joy in our family, and that you're loved and treasured, and that we're always here for you even as an adult, that we're
Oh yeah.
here for you as in a family, and that this relationship continues. What I hope you remember about your childhood is that yes, you learned some things, and yes, we had to discipline you sometimes, but mostly what I just hope you remember is who God is, who we taught you he was, and the word of God, and that you always have access to him.
It's a much better answer than mine. So
No, it's not. No, it's not. You know, I really, as a parent, as a young parent, I wanted so much for you to know. My focus was I want them to know who God is through the way I live and the
Mhm.
way I treat them. So I prayed about that a lot. And
Yeah.
so I hope that that stuck, and I see fruit of that in your life and in your brother's life, that you know who God is and you have a relationship with him, and that blesses me, of course, because it's God's doing, but it's also the seeds I planted. I
Yes.
physically worked to plant those seeds. Those were the things that I wanted, and I want to have a good relationship with you into adulthood. And
Hmm.
we can talk about being adults and our relationship as adults on another episode, because I think once we move into you're being married
Hmm.
now, and one day Drake will be, and how we have to handle our relationship
Hmm.
with adult children changes,
Yeah.
and how we have to give them space to do things on their own. But
Hmm.
even if you're not married, giving your children space to do things on their own. I want you to have to know that you always have that freedom, but I hope we can always be in communication. Like, I wanna have a good communication path.
Yeah. Here, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Did you have a hard time when either one of us would react to a situation differently than how you would? Like, I'm a very verbal person, obviously. Um, I that's how I process things is I talk about them and sometimes too much. That's okay. Or, I kind of in the moment, I express how I'm feeling, and if you give me 10 minutes to freak out about it, then I can move on. But one of my children is not like that. One of my children, when experience this is more about like in the negative points of life. One of my children experiencing something negative is very internal and will shut down. Even not even with negative, he's just like an internal kid. And so
Mhm.
and that's cool. He'll come back a couple weeks later and bring something up maybe, and we're like, "Oh, okay, so you were just thinking about it. Wonderful." But I struggle with that a lot and how to let him do that because I'm
Mm.
such an in the moment person. Figure it out right now. Did you ever face that with either of us? Obviously not me because I just said I'm an external person. But did you like if we would handle something differently than you would have even as a kid or as an adult, I guess either way? Like do you struggle with that or did you struggle with that? It's a long way to ask that.
I think that yeah, I think that every parent does because we think that to be a good parent, we have to help our child respond the way we respond.
Right.
But we're all unique individuals, and even children are not always, they have a different personality. Each of us is born with a different personality. And sometimes you might be like one or both of your parents, but often you have a little bit of them in you, but you respond differently. Like you and Drake respond to the same situation differently.
Mhm.
Men and women seem to respond differently.
Yeah.
I think when we can just shift it to marriage for a second,
Mhm.
initially when your dad and I would experience something where he would respond one way and I would respond another, I
Right.
would wonder, wait, why are we not doing this the same? We love each other. We need to do this the same. But it's just the way you respond. So to answer that question, I would say, yes, there were moments I struggled. Like, how can I get them to
So
like
like
for your
open up to me.
open up to me, or and are they okay while they're not opening up to me? Like, what's going on in their brain? Because they're not verbal, you can't you can't really figure out
Yeah.
what they're processing. And
Yeah.
again, for me, I spent a lot of time praying as a parent, and I still do. Just say, because asking God for wisdom to know how to reach that child,
Yeah.
or God, if I need to take a pause and give that child space to process, learning what they are like, learning, like you've learned now that he is a little bit slower processor. He kind of wants to he does things internally, and then
Mhm.
he'll come back out and talk with you about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's normal, is what I want to say, to struggle with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I think it changes into adulthood. I think when you have teenagers, it's also really hard because
Mhm.
teenagers by nature, even you as a verbal teenager, they still go into, we call it the cave season, which your brother used to hate or one of you hated. And your dad and I would go, "Oh, it's cave season," where you just it's like you recoil to you want to be in your room all the time. But we wanted you to be an active participant in family life, so we
Yeah.
drew you out. But a lot of teenagers process things when they're by themselves, and they
Well, that and
need that extra space.
teenagers are also figuring out their place in the world and
Right.
how their beliefs or their personality or whatever fits into the world around them. So they also process, for better or for worse, with their peers
Yes.
much more than their parents, which is
Parents.
a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not excited for that.
No, and I think as a parent, that's just a season where we really have to be attentive to
Yeah.
how that's going. And
Yeah.
if we see them veering off into a dangerous detour, we need to speak up and put some boundaries in place to keep them safe,
Yeah,
just like we do with our young, small children. Did that answer your question?
it did. I have another one. Did
Okay.
you have a hard time, this is specifically with Drake. Did you have a hard time as Drake started to turn towards dad? That sounds weird. But boys hit a point around 5 and 6. Up until then they're pretty much it's mom. And then
Mhm.
they hit a point where they're like, "Oh, you're my mom and I love you and I want you there. But this one's more like me."
Now I wanna be like dad.
Now I'm when they hit their dad phase, and it's really sweet and wonderful. But did you struggle with that letting go at all?
Oh oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, a little bit because I wanted to make sure I wasn't gonna be forgotten.
Yeah. You're like, "Wait, that's my baby."
"Hey, I've been working so hard for this child. No, wait, don't forget me."
You just got cool.
Oh, and then when you become an adult, then and they move away, you're like, "Please," with no matter what, whether boys or girls, you're like, "Please don't forget me. I'm your mom. Like, I
Yeah.
carried you for 9 months. I've taken care of you all these years. Don't forget me."
Yeah.
You know? And just so I think that, yeah, we go through different things with that's another letting go moment and
Yes.
knowing that that's normal. I think a lot of it is just talking with other moms and realizing that's so normal. It's such a normal thing to feel. Where have you had to give yourself grace as a mom?
Where haven't I had to give myself grace as a mom?
Okay, maybe that's not a good question.
No, it is a good question. I mean, in the shortcomings, in realizing like I'm not enough. I don't have the patience. I don't have the energy. I don't have the bandwidth, and I'm not supposed to have it. I'm supposed to fall short to lean on God.
Right.
And giving myself that, you know what, you're not going to get it every time. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to not react right. You're going to not do, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say not do enough, but like, there's days you're not going to have it together. It's not going to go right. And that's okay. Even though I don't like it, but
Well,
having
there's
to not beat myself up over it,
yeah,
which I think is very normal.
it is very normal. I mean, as a parent, all the way through
Yeah.
until adulthood, you feel that way. I think you feel that way, and I don't feel that way much anymore.
Oh, good. I'm glad to
But
know that it ends when they're 30.
well, I think when you move into adulthood, you can still feel like, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
I can still feel like, did I say the wrong thing? Did I, because
Yeah.
now she's married with children, did I overstep my boundaries?
Right.
I didn't mean to, it wasn't my intention. And I think when we do that, we just need to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
You and I have a great relationship. I don't think we have a lot of that, but every now and then, I mean, we'll have a moment and I can't even I can't even think of an example, but I know we've had moments
Yeah.
where you may have thought my intention was one thing and it was actually another,
Right.
or vice versa. And
Yeah.
I've had to say, "That really hurt my feelings," and you're like, "I didn't mean it that way at all." So I
Yeah.
think communication continues to be a thing with parenting and with your children, even into adulthood, but as far as, like,
I think
feeling
and being willing to forgive is a big one that's not as common.
yes, yes, being willing to forgive and to show up and make amends and being willing to ask forgiveness, I think is so crucial. Not just being willing to forgive, but being willing to ask your
Yeah.
adult child or your small child to forgive you.
Yeah.
Because, like you said earlier, giving yourself grace when you said, "Mommy had big feelings just like you today.
Yeah.
Please forgive me." And let's, start over. Let's pray about this, whatever. God help us both be able to communicate and move forward. Because you can do that with a toddler and you can do that when you're 30 or 60.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important. So, yeah, so I have felt that way. And I gave myself grace through the years. So I don't feel that so much anymore. But when I was your age and taking care of children, I did have to constantly give myself grace for where I thought I was falling short
Right.
in my parenting skills. And I think what you realize when you're my age is that God covers over a lot of that. That
Yeah.
love covers over I finally understand love covering over a lot of shortcomings, a lot of sin,
Yeah.
because it's mistakes, you make them, but knowing having that tethered love between us as a child,
Yes.
as you grew up, you even told me you don't remember me being impatient. I remember me. I remember probably all the times, most of the times, some of them were fading, where I felt
Yeah.
so impatient. And when you communicated that to me a few years ago and say, "I actually don't remember that, mom." I was like, "Really? Praise God for that." Because it felt so big and so real to me
Yeah.
when I was in the thick of it. And so that's what I think. If you had one or two things, or even just one thing that you wanted to share with moms, just encouragement you'd like to give moms with young kids out there, what would you say?
It doesn't sound very encouraging, but the number one thing that I find myself having to say to other women, that sounds really bad. The most common thing that I find myself saying if people ask for advice is you figure it out because you have to.
Mhm.
And that's not some you're not going to find that on a Pinterest board all in a pretty graphic. It's not super fun advice, but it's true. Like you'll figure it out. You will figure out something because you do not have a choice.
Right.
And that once I realized that, then it's like, uh, it's gonna you're gonna get through it one way or another. Like I actually did feel better, even though it's not like some feel good like the sun will come out tomorrow. It's not it's not all this. You're not gonna like I said, you're not gonna find it on a Pinterest board. It's not gonna be embroidered on a jean jacket. It's just you're gonna like you have to. You don't have a choice. Your choice is do it or don't. And obviously, you're not going to not do it. So you're gonna get through it. Your kid's gonna get through it.
You're gonna make it.
Yeah, you'll get through it. It might not be
Yeah.
fun.
Right. But you'll get through it.
Yeah. But when I realized the choice was do it or don't, I was like, oh, well, that's not a choice. So, okay. That's in a lot of life too. That's, I realized that when my husband went away with the military for a year. That was not our choice. And we had just had our first kid. He left a month after that. And because of COVID, we didn't see him for 392 days. I wasn't counting. Um, but like during short tours like that, we saw a couple marriages crumble.
Mhm.
Understandably, that's a tough thing to go through. And I know we're talking about motherhood. I promise it connects. People after we went through that, people asked me, "How the heck did you make it through?" Like, I don't think I could make it through a year without my husband alone with a baby. Like, was it fun? No.
Mhm.
But the choice was get through it, be reunited, or leave and do the rest of my life without my husband. That wasn't a choice. I knew I wanted to do life with him, and it was just this tough year that we had.
Right.
So it was do it or don't. And that when that clicked for me, I was like, oh well, I just have to figure it out. And I will. Like the choice is figured out. So and that I have carried that through, when we got to Germany and then the first time he was on 2 months of nights, I was like, well, how am I supposed to do night shift alone in a foreign country with a baby? You just have to,
Mhm.
because the answer is move back to a different country and then without him again. And that wasn't the choice.
Right.
That there was no choice in my brain. Obviously, that is a choice that some people can make, but like for me, that wasn't a choice. It was just you have to figure it out, and so I knew I would because I had to.
Right.
Like I said, it's not a sunshine and roses piece of advice, but you'll make it, I promise.
Well, I think telling other women and sharing with them that even in the hard seasons, you're gonna make it through.
Yeah.
You're going to find ways. Keep looking, keep searching and for the answers and
Yes.
remind yourself it's not about making everything easier. It's about forging through to the other side. I think that's what you're saying,
Yes.
basically.
Or push through to you just the choice is push through or don't. And if you don't like where you are, then it's an easy choice. Push through.
I'm going to say for moms, young
Yeah.
moms who are at home or not, let me rephrase that. For moms with young kids or teenagers, if you feel alone and unseen because life is hard when you're parenting and raising your kids, know that you are doing an amazing sacred duty raising your kids. And even though sometimes you feel alone, God sees you. And I want to encourage you to give yourself a lot of grace, because in parenting we make a lot of mistakes. We're trying to find what will work with each child, and each child is different. And so I want to encourage moms out there to
Yeah.
just give themselves grace, seek God, and keep doing the next thing. But the other thing I wanted to say was for midlife moms who are probably empty nesting, or they're either launching the last of their children out into the world, or they might have already done that and they're feeling really isolated and alone because our kids go off and have their own lives. How dare they? But that I want to encourage you to just keep gently seeking communication with your children, but not demanding it.
Yeah.
But staying in communication with your kids, checking in with them, see how they're doing, and not getting angry if they don't always reciprocate.
Yeah.
But I want to encourage moms to know that that's not always a personal what's the word I'm looking for? It's not because you've done something wrong that your kids don't communicate. Sometimes they're just those internal processors and it's taking them a while.
Or if they're young and have just left the
Yeah,
house, they are distracted by their now great big world that they're navigating on their own. It's
right,
not necessarily
right.
because I mean, I feel like I did that when I went to college. I didn't check in probably as often as you would have liked the first little bit, but you have this great big world that you're now navigating, and it's just kind of like I don't. You forget, and then it narrows as
Yes.
you learn how to navigate. This area becomes second nature, and so you can then focus more attention to this, and then this, and you go, oh wait, I should call my mom. Okay,
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage women out there to be patient with their adult children with
Yes.
communication, but also to keep communicating.
Hmm.
And I think whether you have little kids or you have adult kids, the encouragement to keep seeking that relationship
Yeah.
will reap rewards eventually. Well, thank you for joining me today for this conversation about motherhood, for being honest about how you feel and how the frustrations may be, but also the joys, because I certainly have loved being your mom, and you are a great joy in my life. I hope today's discussion brought you some encouragement for your own motherhood journey. And to those of you with high school or college graduates, congratulations! This summer might bring big changes. Kids heading off to college, coming back home and starting new jobs, or even moving away from you for the first time. Be encouraged, Mama. There will be hard days, but you can do this. In the coming weeks, I'll be talking with a midlife woman who finally published her first novel at age 49, as well as other inspiring women who are embracing bold, beautiful changes in this season of life. Thanks for tuning in today, and remember, midlife is just a brand new season to find your passion and purpose for your grand finale. Talk next week.